Hey everyone, welcome back to lesson 2 of JavaScript array methods for noobs. In our first lesson, we took a look at what a for loop is, and then we looked at a foundational JavaScript array method, which was the .for each method. And we saw how the .for each method was related to a for loop. In this lesson, we're going to take a look at another very important JavaScript array method, which is the .map method. And .map is great for taking an array and modifying it and creating a new array. So let's take a look at our cities array over here. Remember, we have these 6 cities, each of which is an object with 4 properties. And I want you to imagine for a second that each of these cities undergoes a population change of 1 million. All right, their population goes up by 1 million. Or 1 as we have it written here. It would be 1 because our population is in millions. So we'd like to reflect that in a new array. Now first, I'm going to do this not using .map and show you kind of how clunky it is. And then we'll show how .map does this just very quickly and easily. All right. So I'm going to write a function called create new cities array. Right? And this is going to take an argument called array. Let's just call it array, keep it general. And then in this function, I want to take actually a quick aside here to talk about writing functions. There's a particular pattern of writing functions that I really like that I think is very helpful for beginner and intermediate students. And it's a 3-step process. The first thing you do is visualize what you want to return. Now, in this case, we want to return an array, okay? So that tells you what part 1 of your function is going to be. And it's going to be the basic version of whatever you want to return. So here, that's going to be an empty array. So I'm going to write let updated array equal, and it'll just be an empty array, all right? So that's step 1. Skipping down to step 3 is to return that thing. Return the updated array. Now, step 2 is where you have to actually do what you need to do in the function. And if we're working with arrays, that's very, very frequently going to be our old trusty for loop. So let's write a for loop. Remember, in these parentheses go 3 different things. And as we talked about in our last lesson, they're almost always the same. So I'm going to write let I equal 0, I less than the array that we're looping through, which here is just called array, dot length, and then I plus plus, all right? In the body of our for loop, remember that the first line is always the same. We're going to write const, either current element, or in this case, I'll write current city, equals the array indexed at your counter, I, all right? Now, what do we want to do with that current city? Well, we said here that we want the population to go up by 1. So this is just basic JavaScript. Current city dot population equals current city dot population plus 1. Right? And where do we want that current city to be? We want it to be on the updated array. That's what we're returning anyway. So we better put this current city on the updated array. So we'll write updated array dot push current city. All right. Let's get rid of some line breaks here. And now down below this, I'll write a new constant called updated cities array. This is going to equal the function that we just created, create new cities array, and we want to pass it an appropriate argument. The parameter has to be an array. Here, our array is called cities. And let's see what gets console logged here. Save that, go over here on our terminal, run this, and you can see that now all of our cities, the population has gone up by 1. 8.1 to 9.1, 1.9 to 2.9, etc., etc. Now, what's interesting is that if you actually console log the original array, you might think or hope that this will still say 8.1, 1.9, but it doesn't. It says 9.1 and 2.9. That may or may not be surprising to you. The reason that the original array, the cities array, also updates is because this current city here, when we write this line in line 14, it doesn't really create a new copy of the current city. It just points to the same place in memory. So when you modify in line 15 what the population is, it changes that one place in memory, which is referred to by the objects both in the cities array and the updated cities array. This may or may not be a problem. When we get to actually achieving this via .map, I'll show you a way that you can get around that if that's not your desired behavior. But with that said, we've now seen how we can create a new array using a custom function. But we don't want to do that. We want to use the built-in JavaScript array methods, in this case, .map. So I'm going to get rid of this down here. I won't delete this function, but I'm going to comment it out and move it down. And now we're going to use .map to achieve what we just did. So the .map syntax is going to be much simpler. We're going to write the variable that's going to store the updated array, which here I'll just have const updated cities array. And remember the syntax from last class for .for each. It was cities .for each. So it's always the name of the array dot the array method. So here it's going to be cities.map. And in this .map function, as we saw last time, we can have a named callback function, or we can just do it inline. And the .map callback function gets a bunch of different parameters. The most important is the first one, which is a reference to the individual element of that array, which in this case is city. Right? So what we've just done up here, and we're still on the same line, this, what I'm kind of highlighting right here, that's the equivalent of this line down here, but we just don't have to do that. The .map method does that for us. So now what do we want to do? Well, we want to take this city and we want its population to be equal to whatever the city's population was before, plus 1. All right? Now, difference between .for each and .map. In .map, you actually have to return something from the .map function. I'll show you what happens in a second if we don't do this. But this city object that we just modified a little bit, we want to return that. All right? So return city. And now let's go ahead and console log updated cities array. Save this, go over here, and you can see we have the 9.1, 2.9, 17.5. And just look at how much easier, better looking, more concise this is than having to write our own function to do it. All right, now, I mentioned that I'd tell you what would happen if we don't return something. Let's do that now. If I just forget to return this, what you'll see is that you get a bunch of undefines, right? Because the return value of the callback function in .map was undefined for every single element in that array. Let's bring that back, the return statement that is. And here's our array as we just saw. I'm interested, did this modify the cities array as well? The cities array as well, the original array. Let's see, let's console log that. And in fact, it did. 9.1, 2.9, 17.5, 15, etc., etc. So we have the same problem, if that is in fact a problem. Here's a quick way to get around that. I mentioned before that the issue here is that both arrays, the cities array and the updated cities array, their elements, which are objects, are pointing to the same place in memory. We need to tell JavaScript to separate that, to have them pointing at two different places in memory. Here's a great one way to do it. There's a couple of ways, but this is the way that I like the most for a reason that I'll show you in a second. But you just write this. If if the thing you're working with is an object, which a city is an object, you just write this. City equals curly braces to show that it's still going to be an object, ... city. All right, this is called spread syntax, and it's a great way to take a copy of an object. You can also do this with arrays. There are some caveats to this, which I'll talk about in a second, but for our purposes here, it's perfectly fine. So now, if I go in here, first let me console log updated cities array to make sure that our main goal still worked. And you see the 9.1, 2.9, the updated numbers of population. But now, if I go in here and I console log cities, you'll see that they have the old values, which is the desired behavior if that's what we wanted to do. The reason that I love this syntax so much is that it's actually going to save us a line. I'm going to get rid of line 12. And what we can do here, when I think of spread syntax, what I think of is spread all of the properties of the original object onto this new variable. Here they're both called city. What's nice is that, so you can think of this right here that I'm highlighting as the idea of name, population, language, country. You can go right in here and modify arbitrary property values. So this is basically saying, okay, keep all 4 properties the same, except for any properties I change after this comma. So what's the property we want to change? Population. What's the value that we want the population on the new object to be? We want it to be whatever it was before plus 1, right? Now, watch this. Let's do updated cities. Oops, what do we have here? We must have a spelling error. Updated cities array. It's a little bit of an inconsistency here because I just called this array cities, didn't have the word array. If you have a plural, you don't really need the word array, so I'm going to get rid of this. It actually should have just been updated cities. Okay, let's see what this does. We have the correct updated values. And now if I console log cities, the original array, they have the original values, which is what we want. A quick note on spread syntax. Be careful with it if you have complex objects. So if the properties of your objects are themselves objects or arrays, or specifically arrays of objects, this syntax can get you in trouble. This takes what's called a shallow copy of the object. And if you have all these nested properties, you may need a deep copy. And for that, you'll just have to, do your own research for that. But for our purposes, since these objects are all just, it's a one-level object, just 4 properties with strings or integers, this spread syntax is great. Now, lastly, let's ignore that last discussion that we had about keeping the 2 arrays differently. Let's say that you want to update the cities array and you don't care to keep a copy of the old values. You don't even need to have a new constant called updated cities. You can just do this. Cities equals cities.map. And I would say like 95% of the time, that's what you see. And here, let's go ahead and console log that. Assignment to constant variable. Okay. Sometimes you can get away with assigning new, kind of changing constants, but in this case not. Let's just go up here and change the const cities to let, and then we'll go ahead and run this and console log it, and you can see that the cities array itself has changed with the new values. So .map is a great way to either create a new array or modify the array onto itself. You, of course, can put whatever you want here. You can add new properties, city, continent, whatever. And there's any amount of logic that you want. You can put in that .map function. And it's just a much more straightforward way of doing that rather than writing your own functions. So that's our lesson on .map, and I will see you in the next lesson.